The silence on board the black ship Aeterna Luctus was more terrifying than the screaming. For 3,000 years, this vessel had served the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. Its mission was simple and brutal. It traveled the dark sectors of the Ultima Segmentum. It collected the tithe. It gathered the psykers, the witches, and the mutants who were too dangerous to live but too valuable to waste. They were fuel. They were destined for holy terror to be burned alive in the hollow mountain to keep the golden throne shining. Usually, the cargo hold was a cacophony of madness. Psykers wept, raged, and bargained with invisible demons. The Sisters of Silence, the soulless guards who watched them, walked the corridors in a haze of psychic agony that washed off their null auras like rain on oil. But today, the hold was quiet. Sister Commander Vespera stood at the observation window of Deck 9. She checked her data slate. The hold contained 4,000 alpha-grade and beta-grade psykers. By all Imperial logic, the psychic pressure should be buckling the bulkheads, but the sensors showed a flat line. Vespera tapped the glass. She looked down into the pit. The prisoners were not fighting. They were sitting in circles. They were holding hands. Their eyes were glowing with a soft, rhythmically pulsing blue light. It was the same light that had erupted from the Astronomicon 3 months ago. The light of the New Order. The light of the slime. Vespera hated it. She was a null. She had no soul. She was immune to magic. But she was not immune to pattern recognition. She saw the change. The Golden Throne was no longer consuming these souls. It was communicating with them. The psychological conditioning of the Imperium, the indoctrination that told every psyker they were a monster, was being overwritten. They were no longer afraid. And a psyker without fear is a weapon without a safety catch. The ship's navigator, El Decasso, stumbled onto the bridge. He was weeping. He was not weeping blood, as was common when staring into the warp. He was weeping clear tears. He fell to his knees before Vespera. He told her that the course was wrong. He said the light of terror was not pulling them in to be consumed. He said it was singing to them. He said the Emperor did not want fuel. He wanted his children to come home. Vespera drew her executioner great blade. This was heresy. It was a subtle, insidious heresy that looked like salvation. If the black ship stopped bringing fuel, the machinery of the Imperium would starve. Even if the throne was changed, the bureaucracy required the tithe. The fear kept the galaxy in line. If the witches realized they were not damned, they would rebel. Vespera looked at her squad. She signed the order in battle mark, purged the hold, reset the discipline. The Sisters of Silence descended. They threw psych-out grenades. They fired bolters. But the massacre did not go as planned. The psykers did not panic. They stood up. They raised their hands. They did not cast lightning or fire. They cast a barrier. It was a golden blue hexagon field. It blocked the bolter shells. It blocked the null aura of the sisters. It was not warp magic. It was faith magic. It was the same power the living Saint Rimuru used. Vespera realized the strategic horror of the situation. The slime sat on the throne. He was not just acting as a battery. He was acting as a teacher. He was remotely educating every psyker in the galaxy through the psychic network. He was turning the fuel into an army. The Aeterna Luctus was not a prison ship anymore. It was a troop transport for the enemy within. Vespera activated the ship's self-destruct mechanism. She would not let this infection reach a civilized world. But as she reached for the key, the console sparked blue lightning. The machine spirit of the ship locked her out. The ship turned on its own. It set a new course, not for terror, for Griffin the Four. The rebellion had begun, and it was silent. The Golden Throne was not a chair. It was a mountain of machinery, a continent of brass and gold and screaming circuitry that extended deep into the crust of holy terror. At its summit sat the Emperor of mankind, a desiccated husk held together by stasis fields and sheer willpower. And flowing through the cracks of that throne, permeating the ancient cables and filling the coolant reservoirs, was Rimuru Tempest. He was no longer in his human form. The physical stress of the device was too great for biology. He had reverted to his slime state, expanding his mass until he became a translucent, glowing blue cushion that lined the entire mechanism. He was the coolant, he was the filter, he was the battery. For 10,000 years, the Astronomicon had been fueled by the agonizing sacrifice of 1,000 souls a day. Their lives were fed into the psychic furnace to keep the beacon lit. Rimuru had stopped that on the first hour of the first day. He used his unique skill Beelzebub to consume the raw, chaotic energy of the warp bleeding into the soul system, purified it within his stomach, and then fed it into the throne. It was a closed loop of infinite efficiency. The screaming stopped. The beacon changed color. The light that guided the ships of the Imperium was no longer the blinding, cold white of a dying sun. It was a warm, azure pulse. It did not burn the minds of the navigators. It soothed them. But sitting on the throne was boring. It was excruciatingly, mind-numbingly boring. Rimuru could not move. He could not sleep. If he lost focus for a microsecond, the psychic backlash would scour terror of life. He was trapped in a room with a corpse and 10,000 silent, gold-armored giants. He tried to talk to the custodies. They did not answer. They stood like statues, their guardian spears active, watching him with a mixture of reverence and suspicion. So Rimuru talked to the only other person in the room. The Emperor did not speak in words. He spoke in avalanches of information. His mind was a shattered mirror, reflecting 1,000,000 different futures and 1,000,000,000 different regrets. When Rimuru poked the Emperor's consciousness, the response was like opening a door into a blast furnace. Rimuru saw the Great Crusade. He saw the Primarchs. He saw the betrayal of Horus. He saw the long, slow rot of his dream. The Emperor was not grateful. He was pragmatic. He viewed Rimuru not as a savior, but as a necessary component, a distinct biological tool that had been acquired to solve a fatal system error. In the psychic landscape of the throne room, Rimuru projected an avatar of himself. He sat on a spectral rock. The Emperor appeared as a golden giant, face hidden by light. Rimuru complained about the stiffness of the machinery. He complained about the Gothic architecture. He suggested installing a cushioned seat. The Emperor showed him a vision of a Tyranid hive fleet consuming a sector because a navigator was too comfortable and fell asleep. The lesson was clear. Discomfort breeds vigilance. Pain is the currency of survival. Rimuru argued that efficiency bred survival. They argued like this for weeks. The god of the Imperium and the slime of the Federation, bickering over interior design while holding the galaxy together. But outside the Eternity Gate, the galaxy was reacting to the change. The Blue Era had begun, and it was causing a theological civil war. Robauta Gilliman, the Lord Commander, sat in his scriptorium on Luna. He looked at the reports from the Segmentum Solar. Productivity was up 300%. Warp travel times were cut in half. The message was clear. The Imperium worked better with the slime, but the ecclesiarchy was burning. The High Lords of Terror were in a panic. The ecclesiarch, Decius the Sagittarian III, had declared the blue light to be a miracle of the Emperor, a sign of his evolution. But the Puritan factions of the Inquisition declared it a Xenos contamination. They claimed the Emperor was being held hostage. They claimed the light was a lure. Guilliman rubbed his temples. He had sanctioned this. He had allowed the creature to sit on the throne because he had no choice. The apotheosis Tyranids would have consumed terror otherwise, but now he had to manage the fallout. He looked at the report from the black ships. The tide had stopped. The ships were no longer bringing psykers to terror. They were disappearing. Thousands of rogue psykers, powerful and untrained, were vanishing from the grid. Guilliman knew where they were going. They were going to the light. They were going to Griffin 4. The Federation was becoming a sanctuary for the most dangerous mutation in humanity. If Rimuru weaponized them, he would have an army that could break the Imperium in a day. Guilliman activated the comlink to the Captain General of the Custodes. Trajan Valoris answered. His face was grim. Guilliman asked if the creature was secure. Valoris confirmed that the slime was integrated. He confirmed that the Emperor was stable, but he added a disturbing detail. He said the slime was singing, not metaphorically. The psychic signal of the Astronomicon now carried a melody, a simple, happy tune from another universe, and the people of Terra were starting to hum it. The street gangs in the underhives, the scribes in the administratum, the nobles in the spires. They were humming the song of the Tempest. It was a mimetic virus of optimism, and in the grim darkness of the far future, optimism was the most dangerous heresy of all. Meanwhile, on Griffin 4, the capital of the Tempest Federation was buckling under the weight of its own success. The city of Rimuru was designed to hold 5 million people. It now held 50 million. The sky was clogged with pilgrim ships. They came from the neighboring sectors, guided by the blue light. They were refugees, deserters, and true believers. They brought their families, their diseases, and their hunger. The infrastructure of the Federation was robust, built by the combined genius of the Tau Earth caste and the defecting tech priests. But even it had limits. Shion sat in the Chancellor's office. She wore her secretary suit, but her face was drawn. She had not slept in days. The desk was piled high with requests: food, water, housing, protection. She was a warrior, not an administrator. She missed Rimuru. She missed his voice. She looked at the empty chair and felt a profound loneliness. But she had a duty. She slammed her hand on the desk, startling the goblin clerks. She ordered the construction of the new hab blocks. She ordered the Tempest Templars to police the food lines. She ordered the conversion of the pleasure gardens into agricultural zones. The door opened. Valgal the Fallen entered. The king of the flayed ones moved silently, his metal feet making no sound on the marble floor. He wore a cloak of synthetic skin that Rimuru had made for him. It gave him the sensation of touch, which kept his madness at bay. But the hunger was always there. He reported that the perimeter was secure. The Necron pylons were masking the planet's population signature. But he warned that the sheer number of souls on the planet was generating a psychic noise that could not be hidden forever. It was a beacon. Then the alarm screamed. A ship had exited the Ghost Wind. It was not a Federation ship. It was black, massive, and scarred by millennia of duty. The Eterna Luctus, the black ship that had gone rogue. It drifted into high orbit, its engines dead. It hailed the surface. The voice on the comms was not a captain. It was a child, a young girl, an Alpha plus psyker who had overpowered the crew. She asked for permission to land. She said they had brought the tithe to the saint. Shion looked at Volgal. A black ship carried thousands of unstable psykers. In the Imperium, they were fuel. Here, they were a nuclear bomb waiting to go off. If they landed, and if one of them lost control, they could open a warp rift that would swallow the city. Logic dictated they shoot the ship down. It was the safe choice. It was the Imperial choice. Rimuru-sama would not shoot them, Shion said quietly. Rimuru is not here, Valgul rasped. The risk is absolute. We are the Tempest, Shion said, standing up. We accept everyone. That is the rule. Open the spaceport, prepare the suppression collars, and tell the Templars to stand ready. The landing of the Eterna Luctus was a spectacle of horror and hope. The massive ramp lowered. The sun of Griffin 4 shone into the hold. The psykers walked out. They were emaciated, covered in filth, their eyes wide with the trauma of their existence. But when they stepped onto the soil, they fell to their knees. They felt the aegis. The golden-blue barrier that Rimuru projected from Terra extended all the way here. It was thin, but it was present. It quieted the voices in their heads. For the first time in their lives, the warp was not screaming at them. High Marshal Helbrecht walked among them. He had removed his helmet. He looked at the witches. A year ago, he would have burned them all. Now, he saw recruits. He saw the raw material for a new kind of soldier. He ordered the Tempest Templars to set up triage tents. He ordered the distribution of nutrient paste. He saw the sister commander Vespera being led away in cuffs. She spat at him. She called him a traitor to his gene seed. Helbrecht did not strike her. He told her that loyalty to the Emperor meant loyalty to his will, and his will was currently sitting on the throne glowing blue. But the arrival of the black ship did not go unnoticed. Deep in the halo stars, far beyond the light of the Astronomicon, a silent observer watched the energy shift. Zarek, the Silent King, sat on his dais aboard the Song of Oblivion. The pact he had made with Rimuru, the Velos Protocol, was based on a simple premise. Rimuru would act as a buffer against the Tyranids and the Warp. He would be a localized anomaly, but Rimuru had violated the parameters. He had merged with the throne. He was no longer localized. He was stabilizing the Warp on a galactic scale. To the Necrons, a stable Warp was a disaster. Their grand plan, the Pariah Nexus, was designed to still the Warp completely, to sever the connection between the material universe and the Imperium. They wanted to turn the galaxy into a cold, logical place where they could reverse biotransference. But Rimuru was doing the opposite. He was teaching the galaxy to coexist with the Warp. He was making souls stronger. He was making magic safer. If this continued, humanity would evolve into a fully psychic race, just as the old ones had intended. They would become the new Eldar, but more numerous and more resilient. This was the ultimate threat to Necron supremacy. Zarek looked at the tactical projection of Terra. He saw the blue light. He analyzed the data. The slime was the keystone. If the slime was removed, the Imperium would collapse and the Warp would return to chaos, which the Necrons could then seal. But attacking Terra was impossible. The defenses were too thick. The Custodes, the fleets, the sheer mass of humanity. However, the slime had a weakness. He had a tether. His soul was connected to his people. The food chain skill that allowed him to empower his subordinates also acted as a reverse conduit. If his people suffered, he felt it. If his capital was erased, the shock might be enough to destabilize his hold on the throne. The Silent King issued a command. He did not mobilize his fleet. That would provoke a war he did not want to fight yet. Instead, he activated a protocol from the war in heaven. He sent a signal to a tomb world located in the Segmentum Tempestus, a world that had been sleeping for 60 million years. The world was hollow. Inside it slept a machine that was forbidden even by Necron standards, a construct of the Destroyer cult. On the planet of Antares Prime, the ground cracked. The human colonists lived on the surface, mining the crust, unaware of what lay beneath. The signal hit the core. Green lightning shot from the fissures. The gravity of the planet shifted. The mountains collapsed. The colonists died in minutes as the atmosphere was vented into space. The crust of the planet peeled away like the skin of an orange. Underneath was not rock, but a sphere of black metal, a world engine. But this was not a standard world engine. It was the Morkai's breath. It was designed to consume stars. It was powered by a captured shard of the Catan, known as the Burning One. The engine woke up. Its sensors tasted the galaxy. It tasted the blue light. It found the source of the anomaly. Not terror. Griffin 4. The Silent King's logic was cold. He would not break the non-aggression pact directly. He would claim this was a rogue asset, a malfunction of a sleeping tomb. He would unleash the destroyer cult upon the Federation. If Rimuru left the throne to save his people, the Imperium would fall. If he stayed, his people would die and his soul would be damaged. It was the perfect checkmate. Back on Terra, Rimuru felt the disturbance. He couldn't see it, but he felt a cold spot in the network, a void where a star system used to be. The Emperor felt it too. The ancients are moving. The Emperor's thought pressed against Rimuru's mind. They fear the awakening. They're targeting Griffin, Rimuru realized. The connection to Shion and Veldora, who was still inside him, effectively serving as the throne's backup generator, vibrated with a premonition of doom. I have to go, Rimuru said. If you leave, the throne fails, the Emperor warned. The Astronomicon dies. The webway gate opens. Terror falls to demons in an hour. Then I need a proxy, Rimuru said. I need someone to sit in the chair while I'm gone. There is no one, the Emperor replied. Magnus is lost. Malkador is dust. You are the only one with the capacity. I have a sub-skill, Rimuru said. Parallel existence. I can split my consciousness, but I need mass. I need biomass to create a second body. There is no biomass here. The Emperor showed the barren dungeon of the throne room. Only metal and dust. There is you, Rimuru said. The silence in the throne room was absolute. The custodies tightened their grips on their spears. Rimuru had just suggested the ultimate heresy. He suggested eating a piece of the God Emperor to create a clone. You suggest sacrilege, the Emperor noted. He was not angry. He was amused. I suggest logistics, Rimuru countered. Give me a pound of flesh. I clone a body. I transfer half my consciousness into it. The clone stays here and runs the battery. The real me goes to save my town. The Emperor considered it. It was madness. It was an abomination. It was exactly the kind of desperate, insane gamble that the Imperium was built on. Take the hand, the Emperor ordered. The left one. I don't use it. Rimuru didn't hesitate. He extended a pseudopod of slime. He engulfed the Emperor's left hand. The withered, dried flesh was tough as iron. But Beelzebub could eat anything. He consumed the hand. He analyzed the DNA. It was complex. It was a spiral of infinite potential. It was the genetic code of a god. Rimuru activated clonal regeneration. He mixed the Emperor's DNA with his own slime cells. He poured magicules into the mixture. On the floor of the throne room, a puddle of gold and blue slime formed. It bubbled. It grew. It took shape. It didn't look like Rimuru, and it didn't look like the Emperor. It looked like a fusion. A tall, golden-skinned human with blue hair and eyes that burned with the power of a supernova. The clone opened its eyes. It looked at Rimuru. It looked at the throne. I am the administrator, the clone said. Its voice was a chorus of two. You're the night shift, Rimuru corrected. Rimuru disconnected himself from the throne. The pain was instant. The psychic weight vanished, leaving him feeling light and hollow. The clone stepped up. It sat on the throne. It merged with the machinery. The blue light of the Astronomicon flickered for a second, then stabilized. It turned a shade darker, a royal purple. "I'll be back," Rimuru said to the Emperor. "Do not fail," the Emperor replied. "The Necrons do not bluff." Rimuru teleported. He didn't use the webway this time. He used the connection to his people. He aimed for Grifonza 4. He arrived in the sky above his capital. But he was too late to stop the panic. The sky was dark, not from night, but from a shadow. The world engine had entered the system. It was the size of a planetoid. It was shaped like a jagged skull of black metal. Green lightning arced from its surface, vaporizing the Federation's outer defense fleet. The Morkai's breath did not fire weapons. It emitted a frequency, a song of entropy. The buildings on Griffin 4 began to age. Stone crumbled to dust. Steel rusted in seconds. People aged 10 years in a minute. Rimuru hovered in the air. He felt the entropy hitting his barrier. It was strong. Stronger than Mortarian's rot. This was mathematical death. "Alert," Seal spoke in his mind. She was back. She had missed the action. Enemy analysis. Necron world engine. Class Godkiller. Weaponry. Catan shard of the Burning One. Strategy. Total atomic disassembly. "Can we eat it?" Rimuru asked. "Negative," Seal said. "The object is too massive, and the Catan shard is a fundamental constant of reality. You cannot eat a law of physics." "Then we break it," Rimuru said. He looked down at his city. He saw Shion leading the evacuation. He saw Valgul trying to shield the civilians with his own necrodermis. He saw Helbrecht firing a pistol at a moon-sized ship. They were fighting. They hadn't given up. Rimuru drew his katana. It was glowing with the residue of the Emperor's power. "Attention, world engine," Rimuru broadcasted. "You are violating the speed limit. Pull over." The world engine did not answer. It fired. A beam of solar fire, the essence of a star, shot toward the planet. It was wide enough to incinerate a continent. Rimuru didn't dodge. He flew into the beam. He activated Covenant King Uriel. Absolute severance. He slashed space. He cut the beam in half. The fire parted around the planet, burning the atmosphere but sparing the surface. Rimuru floated in the afterglow. His coat was smoking. His sword was hot. "Okay," Rimuru said. "That was the warning shot." He pointed his sword at the black moon. "Now it's my turn." This was the start of the War of the Ancients. The slime against the machine. The Federation against the inevitable. And in the shadows, the silent king watched, waiting to see if his gamble would pay off, or if he had just awakened something worse than the Catan. But Rimuru had a secret weapon. He hadn't just brought himself back from Terra. He had brought a passenger. Inside his stomach, shielded by the imaginary space, was a soul he had picked up in the throne room. A soul that had been waiting for a second chance. A soul that hated Necrons more than anything. "Ferris," Rimuru whispered to his stomach. "Wake up. It's time to break some metal." The revelation that Rimuru was not fighting alone. He was weaponizing the ghosts of the Imperium. The Iron Hands, Primarch, or what was left of his spirit, was about to make a very loud return. The Blue Era was over. The Iron Era had begun. The shadow of the world engine. Morkai's breath fell upon Griffin IV, not as darkness, but as decay. The sun was still visible, but its light seemed old and tired. The entropy field radiated from the black moonship in waves of invisible pressure. On the surface, the effect was horrific. In the glorious capital city of Rimuru, the marble statues of the Slime Chancellor began to weather as if centuries were passing in seconds. The smooth stone pitted cracked, and turned to dust. The skyscrapers, built with the advanced alloys of the Tau and the blessings of the Mechanicus, groaned as their molecular bonds weakened. Rust bloomed like a fast-forwarded flower on every steel beam. Shion stood in the central plaza. She was wielding Hercules' edge, but the sword felt heavy. Her skin, usually flawless and imbued with magical resilience, felt dry. She looked at her hands. Small, fine lines were appearing. Wrinkles. She was aging. The Oni lifespan was long, but the entropy field was stealing time by the millennium. Around her, the citizens of the Federation were screaming. A young mother holding a baby watched in horror as her throw of a child grew into an old man, and then crumbled into a skeleton in her arms, all within the span of a single heartbeat. The trees in the parks withered, shed their leaves, rotted, and vanished. The air smelled of tomb dust and ancient, stagnant air. This was not war. This was erasure. The Necron Destroyer cult did not want to conquer. They wanted to scour life from the galaxy. They hated biological existence with a cold digital fury. The Morkai's breath was their ultimate expression of self-loathing turned outward. High above the atmosphere, Rimuru Tempest floated in the void. He was wrapped in a barrier of his own aura, a golden blue sphere that sizzled as the entropy waves crashed against it. He felt the drain. His magicule reserves, usually near infinite, were burning up just to maintain his existence against the concept of decay. Seal was running calculations at a speed that would melt a cogitator. The world engine was shielded by a quantum displacement field. It existed slightly out of phase with reality, making it immune to conventional bombardment. Rimuru knew he could not destroy it from the outside, not without unleashing enough power to crack the planet below as collateral damage. He needed a surgical strike, but he was one slime against a fortress the size of a moon. He needed an army, or more accurately, he needed a general who understood the hatred of metal. Rimuru focused on his stomach. In the infinite imaginary space of Beelzebub, there floated a soul. He had scooped it up from the warp dust of the Imperial Palace. It was a fragmented, angry thing, a ghost of iron and regret. It had been lingering around the Emperor for 10,000 years, leading the spectral legion of the damned in moments of dire need. But now it was raw material. Rimuru activated his skill. Creation of all things. He combined it with the living metal data he had absorbed from Drazak. He poured his own magicals into the mold. He didn't create a biological body. That would just wither under the entropy field. He created a body of necrodermis, but infused with the holy psychic energy of the Emperor that still clung to Rimuru's soul. A globule of liquid silver erupted from Rimuru's chest. It floated in the vacuum. It expanded, twisting and hardening. It took the shape of a giant, shoulders like a mountain range, arms like hydraulic pistons, a face that was stern, bearded, and filled with an eternal scowl. The hands of the construct turned a deep, shimmering gunmetal black. The eyes of the giant opened. They did not glow green like a Necron. They burned with the white-hot fire of the Astronomicon. Ferrus Manus, Primarch of the Iron Hands, took his first breath in 10 millennia. He did not breathe air. He breathed the void. He looked at his hands. He flexed his metal fingers. He looked at Rimuru. There were no words needed. The Primarch understood his existence. He was a revenant, a weapon forged by a Xenos god to kill a mechanical god. For Ferrus, who had died hating his own weakness, this was a second chance to prove that flesh is weak, but the soul is iron. Rimuru pointed at the world engine. Ferrus Manus turned. He saw the black sphere. He saw the destroyer ships swarming around it like flies on a carcass. He roared. It was a psychic roar that shattered the vox channels of the Necron fleet. The Gorgon charged. He did not need a jump pack. He propelled himself with pure telekinetic force, a ghost of the Emperor's power. He slammed into a Necron shroud cruiser. He didn't use a weapon. He punched it. His iron fist, reinforced by Rimuru's magic and his own rage, shattered the living metal hull. The cruiser crumpled like tinfoil. Ferrus grabbed the wreckage and threw it at another ship. Rimuru followed in his wake. Seal, support him. Buffs on the big guy. Acknowledged, Seal replied, applying haste, strength enhancement, and holy attribute to individual Ferrus Manus. The Primarch began to glow gold. He moved faster than the eye could follow. He was a comet of destruction tearing through the defensive screen of the world engine. The Necron destroyers, logic-bound killing machines, paused. Their combat algorithms did not have a file for Ghost Primarch made of living metal. They fired their Gauss cannons. Green flare beams hit Ferrus. They stripped away layers of his silver skin, but the metal grew back instantly, fueled by Rimuru's energy supply. Ferrus reached the surface of the world engine. He landed on the black hull. He started running toward the massive weapon array that was projecting the entropy field. He ripped up towers. He smashed defense turrets. He was a virus in the system. But the world engine was not unguarded. The surface opened. From the depths of the artificial moon rose the Protector. It was not a Necron Lord. It was a construct of pure energy contained within a lattice of necrodermis chains. It towered over Ferrus. It was a humanoid shape of burning starfire. Neadrazatha, the Burning One. The Catan who had taught the Necrons how to access the webway. The Catan who burned worlds for sport. The Shard laughed. The vacuum boiled around it. It looked at the silver flea running on its skin. It raised a hand. A wave of plasma hot enough to fuse atoms washed over Ferrus. Ferrus crossed his arms. The plasma hit him. His metal skin bubbled. He was pushed back, his feet carving trenches into the hull. He was strong, but he was fighting a fragment of a god of physics. Rimuru saw this. He dived. He transformed into his human form, wielding his katana. He slashed the vacuum, creating a void barrier in front of Ferrus. The plasma splashed against the barrier. "You okay, Iron Man?" Rimuru asked. Ferrus looked to the slime. His voice sounded like grinding gears. "I have fought gods before, Xenos. They bleed like anything else." "That one doesn't bleed," Rimuru said. "It burns. Don't touch it directly. It will eat your energy." The Catan shard focused on Rimuru. It sensed the anomaly. It sensed the power of the throne. "Thief," the Catan hissed. The sound was the crackle of a dying sun. "You stole the seat of the corpse." "I'm just keeping it warm," Rimuru said. The Catan lashed out. Chains of fire whipped toward them. Rimuru dodged, using thought acceleration to weave through the attacks. Ferrus charged through the fire, ignoring the pain, and swung a massive piece of debris at the Catan. The debris melted before it hit. Below them, on the planet, the situation was critical. The entropy field was intensifying. The barrier Valgol had erected was failing. High Marshal Helbrecht, watching the battle from the command center of the Star of Tempest, which was holding a low defensive orbit, made a decision. He saw the Primarch. He recognized the heraldry. He recognized the silver hands. He fell to his knees on the bridge. He was weeping. To see a son of the Emperor returned, even in this strange form, broke his conditioning. "The Gorgon lives," Helbrecht whispered. "The Saint has brought back the dead. We can't just watch," Shion shouted over the comms from the surface. She was aging rapidly. Her hair was turning white. Rimuru-sama needs help. We have to break that field generator. The generator is inside the moon. Valgor's voice came over the vox. The Ghost King was on the surface with Shion, his metal body unaffected by age, but his synthetic skin rotting away. We must enter the Ghost Wind to bypass the hull. Can you take a ship through? Helbrecht asked. No, Valgor said. Too much mass. But I can take a strike team. Do it, Helbrecht said. I'm coming down. Teleport me to the surface. Helbrecht teleported. He arrived in the plaza. He was an old man now. The entropy had seeped through his void shields. His armor hung loose on his withered frame. He coughed dust, but he drew his sword. Ghost King, Helbrecht rasped. Take us to the enemy. Valgor nodded. He raised his staff. He wrapped Shion, Helbrecht, and a squad of Tempest Templars in a shroud of shadows. They vanished from reality. They entered the Ghost Wind, the dimension between dimensions where the flayed ones hunted. They moved instantly. They walked through the vacuum of space. They walked through the hull of the world engine. They emerged inside the massive command cathedral of the enemy ship. The interior of the world engine was a nightmare of non-Euclidean geometry. Gravity was subjective. The walls were lined with stasis tombs of millions of destroyer necrons. In the center of the vast chamber stood the entropy core. It was a spinning singularity of green light, suspended in a cage of blackstone. Guarding it was the destroyer lord, Skorpek the Ravager. He was a tripod-legged monstrosity with 3 hyperphase blades. He saw the intruders emerge from the shadows. Flesh, Skorpek screeched. Filth. Attack, Shion yelled. She ignored her aged body. She burned her life force to swing Hercules's edge. The battle for the core began. It was a desperate melee. The Templars fired their bolters, but the destroyers swarmed them. Helbrecht fought with the desperation of a man who has minutes to live. He parried a phase blade, his old bones creaking, and thrust his sword into a Necron's chest. Above, on the hull, Rimuru and Ferris were losing. The Catan Shard was too powerful. It was feeding on the energy of the world engine. It grew larger. It began to bend reality. It turned the hull into magma. It rained meteors of fire. Ferris was melting. His left arm was gone, vaporized by a plasma lance. He roared in frustration. "We need to cool him off," Rimuru yelled. "How?" Ferris bellowed. "He is a star." "Beelzebub," Rimuru said. "I can't eat him, but I can eat the heat." Rimuru made a gamble. He flew directly at the Catan. He didn't attack. He opened his mouth. Or rather, he opened the dimensional maw of his ultimate skill. Gluttony. Thermal vacuum mode. Rimuru began to suck in the heat. He drained the ambient temperature of the battlefield. The magma hull froze instantly. The plasma fire of the Catan dimmed. The shard shrieked. It felt the cold. It hated the cold. "You cannot extinguish me," the Catan roared. "Watch me," Rimuru gritted his teeth. His slime body was boiling. He was taking in temperatures that defied physics. He was processing the energy of a sun. "Seal, divert the heat. Where do I put it?" "Route to Veldora," Seal suggested. "The storm dragon has high thermal resistance." Inside Rimuru's soul, Veldora was reading a manga. Suddenly, the sky of his dimension turned into fire. "Hey," Veldora yelled. "Turn down the thermostat. You're burning my comics." "Sorry," Rimuru thought. "Hold it for a minute." With the Catan weakened by the thermal drain, Ferris saw his opening. He didn't have a left arm, so he used his right. He charged. He tackled the Catan. "Iron breaks fire," Ferris roared. He hammered his fist into the Citan's chest. The impact cracked the necrodermis containment cage. The essence of the star god leaked out. Inside the world engine, Shion was dying. The Destroyer Lord had cut her leg. She was bleeding, and she was old. She couldn't stand. Valgul was fighting 3 destroyers at once, his staff spinning. Helbrecht was on the ground, his sword broken. The Destroyer Lord loomed over Shion. He raised his blade for the killing stroke. Die meat, the Necron buzzed. Then the floor shook. The entropy core flickered. Ferrus Manus had punched the Catan so hard on the outside that the shockwave travelled through the ship. The containment field of the Catan linked to the ship's power core. Destabilized. Rimuru saw the crack in the Catan. Now Ferrus, throw him. Ferrus grabbed the burning god. He spun around. He threw the Catan shard directly at the hull surface above the entropy core chamber. The shard crashed through the adamantium armor. It melted through the decks. It fell like a meteor into the command cathedral. Skorpek looked up. He saw a god falling on him. The Catan slammed into the entropy core. The 2 massive energy sources collided. The singularity imploded. The Catan screamed as it was sucked into the black hole meant to generate the decay. The explosion was silent. A wave of anti-entropy washed outward. On the surface of Griffin IV, time snapped back. The rust vanished. The dust reformed into stone. The old mother looked down and saw her baby cooing in her arms. Shion felt her strength return. Her wrinkles smoothed. Her hair turned purple again. Helbrecht stood up. His armor was silver again. His body was rejuvenated. The world engine groaned. It was dying. Its heart had just eaten its brain. "Evacuate," Valgul shouted. "The moon falls." Valgul grabbed the team. He dragged them into the ghost wind just as the command deck collapsed. In space, Rimuru and Ferrus watched. The black moon began to crack. Green light spilled from the fissures. The gravity well of the Catan core collision was tearing the ship apart. "We did it," Rimuru panted. He was exhausted. He was small. Ferrus Manus floated beside him. The Primarch was fading. His silver body was unstable. Without the constant feed of battle lust and Rimuru's focus, the construct couldn't hold the soul. "I am fading," Ferrus said. He looked at his hand. It was turning to mist. "I can hold you," Rimuru said. "I can put you back in storage." "No," Ferrus said. He looked at the burning wreckage. "I have broken the machine. That is enough for today. Let me sleep. The Emperor, he calls." "He's waiting for you," Rimuru said. Ferrus Manus nodded. "You fight well, little monster. For a Xenos." The Primarch dissolved. His soul shot back toward Terra, like a golden comet returning to the source. Rimuru was alone. He watched the world engine disintegrate. The pieces fell into the local star. He checked the planet. It was safe. The population was shaken, confused, but alive. The aging had been reversed because the entropy field was not natural time. It was the curse. When the curse broke, the effect reverted. Rimuru descended. He landed in the plaza. Shion was there. She ran to him. She didn't care about protocol. She hugged him. "I thought I was going to be a grandma," she wailed. "You'd make a cool grandma." Rimuru patted her head. Helbrecht approached. He looked at the sky where the Primarch had been. "He was here," Helbrecht said softly. "The Gorgon." "He helped," Rimuru said. "He hates Necrons." "This changes everything," Helbrecht said. "The Primarchs, they are not gone. They are waiting." "Yeah," Rimuru said. "And we might need more of them." But the victory was short-lived. Seal interrupted the reunion. "Alert," Seal said. "Strategic anomaly detected. The world engine was not the main assault force. It was a distraction." "What?" Rimuru froze. "A planet killer was a distraction." "Affirmative," Seal said. "While we were engaged with the Morkai's breath, the Silent King moved his main fleet. He has positioned the Song of Oblivion over the Pariah Nexus. He is expanding the Nexus. Rimuru pulled up the galactic map. The Pariah Nexus was a region of space where the Necrons had severed the warp completely. It was expanding. It was growing toward Terra. He's trying to cut the cord, Rimuru realized. He saw the blue light. He knows I'm on the throne. He's trying to isolate Terra from the warp, so I can't project the Astronomicon. If the Silent King succeeded, the Imperium would go dark. The demons would invade. The Blue Era would end in silence. We have to stop him, Rimuru said. But my main body is still on the throne. I'm just a clone. I don't have full power. There is another option, Seal said. We cannot fight the Silent King with force. He has the celestial orrery. He can delete stars. We must fight him with diplomacy. Or leverage. What leverage? We have the Burning One, Seal said. The Catan Shard didn't die. It's inside the debris of the world engine. If we capture it, we have a bargaining chip. The Silent King needs the Catan Shards to reverse the biotransference. Rimuru looked at the falling debris. Shion, get the net. We're going fishing for a god. But before they could move, a message arrived. It was a psychic transmission. It bypassed the comms. It spoke directly to Rimuru's mind. It wasn't the Emperor. It wasn't the Silent King. It was a voice that sounded like silk and knives. My dear slime, the voice purred. You have made such a mess, and it is delightful. Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, the dark god of excess, had been watching. You seek to save the galaxy, Slaanesh whispered, but you are only feeding it hope. And hope is my favorite flavor. Come to the Eye. I have a gift for you. Rimuru shuddered. He blocked the transmission. We are not going to the Eye, Rimuru said. We are going to the Nexus. Prepare the fleet. We have to have a chat with Zarek. The survival of Griffin the Safor, but the revelation of a grander strategy. The Silent King was playing 4D chess. He had sacrificed a world engine just to keep Rimuru busy while he prepared the ultimate silence. The Federation had survived the test of time, but now they had to face the test of nothingness. And deep in the wreckage of the world engine, the Catan Shard of the Burning One pulsed. It was weak, it was angry, and it was waiting for a new master. Rimuru was about to become a collector of gods. The salvage operation in the gravity well of the Griffon star was a race against astrophysics. The wreckage of the world engine Morkai's breath was not merely falling. It was being consumed by the star's tidal forces. The heat was absolute. The radiation was enough to strip the electrons from adamantium plating. Yet, amidst the cascading debris of black stone and twisted necrodermis, a single point of light burned brighter than the sun itself. The shard of Nyadrazatha, the Burning One, was screaming in the void. It had been ejected from its containment harness by the physical assault of Ferrus Manus, but it was not destroyed. A Catan cannot be destroyed by conventional means. It is a fundamental constant of the universe given sentience and malice. It was currently trying to reform its energy body, drawing upon the plasma of the star to build a new avatar of annihilation. Rimuru Tempest, in his clone body, stood on the bridge of the Star of Tempest. The ship was shielded by a multi-layered barrier system, void shields from the Imperium, dispersion fields from the Tau, and a quantum phase shift generator provided by Valgol the Fallen. Even with these defenses, the temperature on the bridge was rising. Rimuru watched the tactical hololith. The Catan Shard was growing. It had formed a torso of white-hot fire, vast enough to crush a battleship in its hand. If it finished reforming, it would not only destroy the salvage team, it would detonate the sun to spite them. Seal provided the solution. To catch a god of fire, one does not use a net. One uses a vacuum. The plan required the synchronization of the Federation's most potent assets. Rimuru communicated with Shion, who was deployed in a modified heavy lifter shuttle, alongside a squad of Valgul's elite Lich Guard. They were carrying a device that Magos Hesh had constructed in the frantic hours following the battle. It was a tesseract labyrinth, but oversized, built from the salvage of the world engine's own core. It was a prison made of hypergeometry, capable of folding space into infinite dimensions. Shan piloted the shuttle through the solar flares. The heat was blistering, cracking the cockpit glass. She didn't flinch. She maneuvered the shuttle directly above the reforming Satan. The Lich Guard activated the tesseract. A green pyramid of light descended, surrounding the burning one. The Catan roared. A sound transmitted through the solar winds, shaking the shuttle. It lashed out with whips of plasma, vaporizing 2 of the Lich Guard instantly. Their living metal bodies did not regenerate. They were simply erased from existence. Rimuru acted. He projected his consciousness through the comms link. He did not attack the Catan with force. He attacked it with data. He utilized the knowledge he had gained from the Emperor's hand. He broadcasted the engrammatic enslavement protocols that the Silent King had used 16 million years ago to shatter the Satan. It was a sequence of logical paradoxes and command codes that targeted the Catan's ego. The Burning One paused. It remembered the chains. It remembered the betrayal. In that moment of hesitation, the tesseract field collapsed. The green light turned into a singularity. The fire of the Catan was sucked into the device. The star returned to its normal luminosity. The shuttle retrieved the device, now a small, glowing cube of blackstone, and boosted for the safety of the outer system. The capture of the Burning One was a tactical victory, but the strategic consequences were immediate and catastrophic. The Satan are not merely monsters. They are the anchors of the material universe's laws. By capturing a major shard, Rimuru had rung a bell that echoed across the galaxy's hidden dynasties. Deep within the Mandragora system, the Pharaon of the Saltaic dynasty, Imhotep the Stormlord, sat upon his throne. He was the greatest strategist of the Necron race, a rival who despised the Silent King's return. His sensors detected the activation of a tesseract labyrinth in the Griffin sector. He analyzed the energy signature. It was Nyadrazata, the Stormlord's logic core's word. Zarek, the Silent King, had claimed he returned to save the Necrons from the Tyranids. But if Zarek was allowing a biological anomaly like Rimuru to hoard Satan's shards, it suggested weakness. Or worse, it suggested that Zarek was losing control of the great game. Imhotep saw an opening. He ordered the mobilization of the Saltaic legions. He would not aid Griffin, nor would he aid Zarek. He would march to seize the shard for himself. The Necron civil war, simmering for years, was about to boil over. Meanwhile, the situation in the wider Imperium was deteriorating with terrifying speed. The destruction of the world engine was a diversion, as Seal had predicted. The Silent King's true move was revealed in the Nephilim sector. The Pariah Nexus was expanding. Pylons of blackstone, erected in silence on 1,000 worlds, activated simultaneously. They formed a grid that severed the connection between real space and the warp. Robert Gilliman stood in the strategium of the Macragger's honor, docked at Luna. The holographic map of the galaxy was turning dark. The light of the Astronomicon, the blue pulse of hope that Rimuru projected from Terra, was being blocked. A wall of silence was rising in the galactic south. Inside that wall, nothing could be heard. Astropaths went catatonic. Ships dropped out of the warp, stranded in a calm sea with no wind. Entire systems went dark. The reports from the worlds inside the Nexus were the stuff of nightmares. There was no invasion. There were no explosions. There was only the stilling. The human populations of these worlds simply stopped. They stopped working. They stopped eating. They stopped caring. The soul, deprived of its connection to the warp, withered. Men and women sat in their homes, staring at walls, while their bodies slowly starved. They became biological automatons, husks waiting for the Necrons to come and harvest them for experimentation. The Silent King was not killing humanity. He was turning them into cattle. Guilliman contacted Rimuru. The connection was difficult. The clone on Griffin the 4 was far away, and the interference from the Nexus was strong. Guilliman explained the situation. He could not send the Indomitus Crusade into the Nexus. Space Marines were resilient, but even they felt the lethargy of the stilling. The Primaris Marines were resistant, but not immune. To enter the Nexus was to fight in a tomb where your own spirit was the enemy. Rimuru understood the stakes. If the Nexus expanded to Terra, the throne would be cut off. The connection between his clone and his main body would sever. The Emperor would die. The Webway Gate would open, and Terra would be consumed by demons. It was a race against silence. Rimuru needed a way to traverse the Nexus without losing his soul. He needed a path that existed neither in real space nor in the warp. He needed the Webway, but the human Webway project was a ruin. The only masters of the labyrinth were the Aeldari. The meeting took place on a neutral station in the darkness of the intergalactic void, a secret outpost known only to the Harlequins. Rimuru, in his human form, arrived alone. He was met by a figure of equal presence. Eldred Ulthran, High Farseer of Ulthwe, stood waiting. Beside him was Ivrain, the emissary of Inid, the god of the dead. The tension was palpable. The Aeldari viewed Rimuru as a chaotic anomaly, a Monkey creation that defied the strands of fate. Yet Eldred had seen the blue light of the Astronomicon. He had felt the calming of the warp. He knew that Rimuru was the only variable preventing the Ranadandra, the final end. Imuru placed the Tesseract Labyrinth on the table. The cube glowed with the trapped fire of the Burning One. Ivrain flinched. The Catan were the ancient enemies of her people. To see one captured by a slime was a shock to her genetic memory. Rimuru made his offer. He asked for passage. He wanted the Aeldari to guide the Federation fleet through the Webway, bypassing the Pariah Nexus field, to strike directly at the Silent King's flagship, the Song of Oblivion. In exchange, he offered the Catan Shard. He offered to give the Aeldari the weapon to destroy their oldest foe. Eldred looked into the future. He saw 1,000,000 paths. In most, the galaxy ended in silence. In some, it ended in rot. But in a few, a very few, there was a new color. Blue. He looked at Rimuru. He saw the soul of the slime. It was not a single soul. It was a network, a federation of spirits bound by consent, not slavery. It was similar to the Infinity Circuit, but living. Eldrad agreed, but with a condition. The Catan Shard would not be given to the Aeldari. It was too dangerous. Instead, Rimuru must use it. He must use the Catan to break the Necron pylons. He must use fire to fight the silence. And after the battle, if they survived, Rimuru would owe the Aeldari a favor to be named later. Rimuru accepted. The strategic chain reaction began. The Federation fleet, repaired and reinforced, rendezvoused with the Aeldari Corsair fleets at the edge of the Nexus. It was a bizarre armada. The sleek, bone-white ships of the Eldar flew alongside the blocky, industrial ships of the Federation and the Gothic cruisers of the defected Mechanicus. They entered the Webway Gate. The transition was smooth. The Webway was a tunnel of wraithbone and psychic crystal, insulated from the warp and the material universe. Inside, the stilling could not touch them. They moved faster than light, bypassing the silent systems where humanity rotted in their homes. But the Silent King was not blind. He controlled the dolmen gates, the Necron breaches into the webway. As the Allied fleet moved through the labyrinth, the walls of the tunnel began to shift. Necron doom sides materialized from the tunnel walls. The ambush was sprung. The battle inside the webway was a claustrophobic nightmare. There was no room to maneuver. It was a knife fight in a corridor. The Eldari ships danced, their holofields confusing the Necron targeting computers. The Federation ships acted as anvils, absorbing the ghost fire with their reinforced shields. Rimuru stood on the bridge of the Star of Tempest. He felt the pressure of the webway. It was a living thing, and it was in pain. The Necron intrusion was like a virus in a vein. "Launch the boarders," Rimuru ordered. "Clear the path." Shaon and Valgul led to the assault. They used teleportation homers to jump directly onto the Necron ships, blocking the tunnel. It was a clash of three species. Shion, the Oni, fought alongside banshees of the Eldari. They moved in sync, a whirlwind of blades. The flayed ones of Valgul tore into the Necron immortals, their metal claws screeching against the living metal. They broke through the blockade. The fleet accelerated, bursting out of the webway portal directly in the heart of the Nephilim sector. They emerged into real space, and the horror of the Nexus hit them instantly. Even with the Geller fields and the spirit stones of the Eldar, the stilling was heavy. It felt like walking underwater. Crewmen on the Federation ships collapsed, weeping. The will to fight evaporated. Rimuru felt his own energy draining. The clone body was struggling to maintain cohesion. He amplified his voice using the ship's vox. He didn't give a speech about duty or the Emperor. He used his haki. He projected his desire. He projected the memory of a feast, the taste of cold beer, the warmth of a hot spring, the sound of laughter. He forced the concept of life into the minds of his crew. It wasn't a cure, but it was adrenaline. The crew stood up. They were groggy, but they were angry. They were angry that the silence was trying to take their joy. Ahead of them lay the source of the silence, the Song of Oblivion, the flagship of the Silent King. It was a vessel the size of a continent, a crescent moon of green lightning. It was surrounded by a fleet of Cairn-class tomb ships. But Rimuru did not attack. He opened a channel. He broadcasted on all frequencies. He didn't speak to Sarek. He spoke to the galaxy. "Attention, Necron dynasties." Rimuru's voice, amplified by the Catan shard he held in the Tesseract, boomed across the sector. "I am Rimuru Tempest. I hold the Burning One, and I have come to return what was stolen." He released a pulse from the Tesseract. It was a specific frequency, the energy signature of Nyadrazatha. The reaction was instantaneous. Across the galaxy, dormant tomb worlds woke up. Necron overlords, jealous of Zarek's power, saw the signal. They saw that the Silent King had failed to contain the Catan. They saw that a vermin possessed the weapon of gods. Imhotep, the Stormlord, monitoring the situation from Mandragora, laughed. He ordered his fleet to jump, not to aid Zarek, but to claim the prize. At the same time, the Chaos Gods reacted. The expansion of the Paria Nexus was hurting them. It was shrinking their feeding grounds. The arrival of Rimuru in the center of the Nexus was a catalyst. If Rimuru destroyed the pylons, the warp would rush back in. If Zarek won, the warp would be sealed forever. Khorne, the blood god, grew impatient. He did not care for silence. He wanted noise. He wanted skulls. He swiped his hand across the fabric of the warp. a warp rift tore open, not in the nexus, but on the edge of the perimeter. A massive fleet of world eaters, led by Khan the Betrayer, spilled out. They were insane with rage, the only emotion strong enough to pierce the stilling. The chain reaction was complete. Rimuru had turned a blockade into a four-way brawl. The Necron Loyalists, the Necron Separatists, Sautek, the Federation Al-Dari Alliance, and the World Eaters. Zarek sat on his throne aboard the Song of Oblivion. He watched the tactical plot descend into madness. He looked at the hologram of the slime. Illogical, Zarek stated. You invite chaos to defeat order. You risk total annihilation. Rimuru's hologram appeared on the bridge of the Necron flagship. The slime was smiling. I don't like your order, Zarek, Rimuru said. It's too quiet. A party needs noise. Then you shall have noise, Zarek said. The Silent King stood up. He activated the celestial orrery link. He wasn't going to just fight the fleet. He was going to manipulate the stars themselves. He reached out and touched the hologram of the local sun. He began to induce a supernova. Seal, Rimuru shouted on his own bridge. He's going to blow the star. Confirmed, Seal said. He is willing to sacrifice the system to erase the anomaly. We must board his ship. We must physically stop him before the solar destabilization reaches critical mass. Boarding team, Rimuru yelled. Shion, Valgul, Ivrain, with me. What about the fleet? Helbrecht asked. The World Eaters are charging us. Let them fight the Necrons, Rimuru said. Khan hates everything. Point him at the shiny skeletons. Rimuru teleported. He didn't aim for the hangar. He aimed for the throne room of the Silent King. The final confrontation began. Rimuru, the slime clone, stood before Zarek, the last of the Silent Kings. Zarek was tall, majestic, and radiated an aura of absolute command. He wielded the scepter of eternal glory. He looked at the ragtag group of intruders, a slime, an Oni, a flayed one, and an Aeldari witch. You are anomalies, Zarek said. Errors in the code. We are the future, Rimuru said. He drew his katana. And we are here to cancel your subscription to the galaxy. As they charged, the star outside began to turn red. The supernova had begun. The clock was ticking. The fate of the blue era hung on a sword fight at the end of the universe. And in the shadows of the throne room, something else watched. A shard of another Catan, trapped in the Silent King's dais. The deceiver. It smiled. It whispered to Ivrain. The slime lies, the deceiver murmured. He is not saving you. He is eating you. Ivrain faltered. The seed of doubt was planted. The chain reaction was not just military. It was spiritual. The alliance was cracking before the battle even finished. The galaxy burning, the star dying, and the trust between allies hanging by a thread. The throne room of the Song of Oblivion was a cathedral of impossibility. It did not obey the laws of Euclidean geometry. The walls shifted like liquid mercury, reflecting a million different timelines where the Necrons ruled supreme. In the center of this architectural madness stood Zarek, the Silent King. He did not look like a warrior. He looked like a statue carved from the death of stars. His cloak of flayed godskin rippled in an invisible wind, and his scepter of eternal glory hummed with a frequency that unmade atomic bonds. Rimuru Tempest, in his clone body forged from the Emperor's flesh and his own slime, stood opposite him. He felt small. The psychic weight of the Silent King was not a roaring fire like the Emperor, or a chaotic storm like the warp gods. It was a void. It was the crushing pressure of the deep ocean where no light ever reaches. Beside Rimuru stood Shion, her greatsword, Hercules' edge, raised but trembling under the immense gravity of the room. Valgal the Fallen, the king of the Flayed Ones, crouched low, his synthetic skin cloak hissing as the anti-organic field of the throne room tried to dissolve it. And Ivrain, the daughter of Eldred and emissary of the dead god, held her jeerings close, her eyes darting to the shadows where the deceiver whispered lies. Zarek moved. He did not charge. He simply existed in one location, and then he existed in front of Rimuru. It was not teleportation. It was the mastery of time. The scepter swung down. Rimuru raised his katana. Seal accelerated his thought process to 1 billion times the norm, allowing him to perceive the strike. The blade met the staff. There was no sound. Sound requires air, and the violence of the impact shattered the atmosphere of the room instantly. A shockwave of pure kinetic force threw Shion and Valgal backward into the shifting walls. Rimuru's knees buckled. The clone body was strong, reinforced by the Emperor's genetic code, but Zarek was an entity that had killed the old ones. The scepter pulsed. A beam of tachyon energy shot from the tip, aimed at Rimuru's core. Rimuru didn't block it. He ate it. He activated Beelzebub on a localized scale, consuming the energy beam. But the taste was bitter. It tasted of entropy. You steal power like a parasite. The Silent King's voice resonated in Rimuru's mind. It was not telepathy. It was a direct transmission to the auditory center of the brain. You have no creation of your own. I create friendships, Rimuru gritted his teeth, pushing back against the staff. And that is something you forgot how to do 60 million years ago. Zarek flicked his wrist. Gravity reversed. Rimuru fell toward the ceiling. Spikes of blackstone erupted from the roof, aimed to impale him. Rimuru twisted in midair, slashing the spikes with his sword, turning them into harmless dust. He pushed off the ceiling and dive-bombed the king. Shion recovered and charged. She targeted the Triarch Praetorians who guarded the dais. These were the elite of the elite, the judges of the Necron race. They wielded rods of covenant. Shion roared, her aura exploding in purple flame. She swung her sword like a baseball bat. The Praetorians blocked with perfect synchronization. They fought like a machine, efficient and emotionless. Shan fought like a storm, chaotic and wild. She took a hit to the shoulder, the Gauss energy burning her flesh, but she ignored it. She cut a Praetorian in half at the waist. The metal body tried to reassemble, but Shion's sword carried the property of soul damage. The lights in the Necron's eyes went out. Valgal faced his judgment. He lapped at Zarek, his claws extended. He was a traitor, a creature of the flayed curse. Zarek did not even look at him. He waved his hand, and Valgal froze. The command protocols of the Silent King overrode the Flayed One's motor functions. Valgal screamed in his static-filled voice as his own body locked up. He was forced to kneel. "You are broken," Zarek stated. "You are a glitch." He aimed the scepter at Valgal's head. Rimuru saw this. He abandoned his attack on the king and used Shadow Step to appear in front of Valgal. He took the blast meant for his ally. The energy hit Rimuru's chest. The clone body destabilized. Gold blood sprayed on the black floor. Rimuru staggered, coughing. Valgal looked up, his optical sensors widening. "You bleed for me. For a machine." "We are all broken, Valgal," Rimuru wheezed. "That's how the light gets in." On the edge of the battle, Ivrain stood paralyzed. The voice of the Catan Shard known as Mephetran the Deceiver was slithering into her ear. The Shard was trapped in the dais of the throne, powering the ship's shields. It whispered that Rimuru was a liar. It whispered that the slime was actually a tyrannid bioform, a scout for the Great Devourer meant to lure the Eldar into a trap. It played on her deepest fears. It showed her a vision of the incarnate being eaten by Rimuru. "Ivrain, kill the monster," the deceiver hissed. "Strike him while he is weak. If you do not, your race ends today." Ivrain raised her sword, the Kavir. She looked at Rimuru's exposed back. Her hand shook. The logic of the deceiver was flawless. Rimuru was an anomaly. He was dangerous. Eliminating him would restore the balance. Outside the ship, the galaxy was ending. The sun of the Nephilim sector was turning red. The artificial supernova induced by the Silent King was reaching critical mass. Solar flares the size of planets lashed out, vaporizing the smaller ships of the Federation fleet. The shields of the Star of Tempest were failing. On the bridge of the Federation flagship, High Marshal Helbrecht watched the star die. He held onto the tactical rail as the ship shook violently. The World Eater's fleet was suicidal. They were flying directly into the Necron lines, boarding the tomb ships, caring nothing for the solar fire. Khan the Betrayer was on the hull of a Cairn-class ship, chopping through the adamantium with Gorchild, screaming at the sun to fight him. "We have minutes before the star collapses," Magos Hesh reported. "The gravity waves will tear the fleet apart. We must jump." "We do not jump without the Chancellor," Helbrecht ordered. "Maintain position. Divert all power to forward shields." Back in the throne room, Seal flashed a warning red in Rimuru's mind. "Alert. Solar destabilization at 90%. Time until total system annihilation. 120 seconds. Probability of defeating Sarek within that time frame. 0%. Rimuru wiped the blood from his mouth. He looked at Zarek. The Silent King stood impassive. He was willing to let the sun explode. His ship, the Song of Oblivion, had containment shields that could survive a supernova. Rimuru and his friends did not. "You are stalling," Zarek said. "The star dies, and you die with it. This is the mercy of silence." Rimuru realized he couldn't win this fight. Not with a sword, not with magic. Zarek was too strong, and the environment was too hostile. He needed a third option. He needed a variable that Zarek couldn't control. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the Tesseract Labyrinth. Inside the small black cube, the captured shard of the Burning One, Nyadrazatha, raged in silent fury. "Seal," Rimuru thought. "What happens if I break this?" "Calculation," Seal replied instantly. "If you release the Burning One here, it will consume the ambient energy. It will manifest fully. It is a star god. It feeds on stars. Will it eat us? Probability high. However, its hatred for Sarek exceeds its hunger for biomass. The Necrons shattered it. It wants revenge more than it wants food. It was a small choice, to break a box. But the outcome was madness. It was releasing a wolf to kill a bear while you were stuck in the same cage." Rimuru looked at the cube. He looked at Zarek. "Hey King," Rimuru said, holding up the cube. "You like collecting things, right?" Zarek's eyes narrowed. He recognized the energy signature. "You hold fire in your hand," Zarek said. "Do not be a fool. If you release that, it will burn this sector to ash." "It's already burning," Rimuru said. "I'm just changing the fuel." Rimuru threw the Tesseract into the air. He didn't just throw it. He infused it with his own magicules, overloading the containment matrix. Ivrain saw the cube. The deceiver screamed in her mind, "No, stop him. He dooms us all." Ivrain lunged. She swung her sword at the cube, trying to bat it away. Shion intercepted her. The Oni blocked the Eldar blade with her own. "What are you doing?" Shion yelled. "He's killing us," Ivrain screamed, tears in her eyes. "The deceiver showed me. He's saving us," Shion roared, pushing Ivrain back. The Tesseract hit the floor. It cracked. The sound that followed was not an explosion. It was an inhalation. The light in the room vanished. The shadows vanished. All energy was sucked into the crack in the cube. Then, the Burning One emerged. It did not take a humanoid form this time. It took the form of a dragon made of white plasma. It filled the massive throne room. Its heat was so intense that the liquid metal walls began to boil. The gravity of the room shifted from the floor to the Catan. Nyadrazata roared. It was the sound of a solar flare. It looked at Rimuru. It looked at Ivrain. And then it looked at Zarek. The memory of the betrayal 60 million years ago flooded the room. The Catan remembered the Necrons turning their weapons on their gods. It remembered being shattered. Zarek, the Catan bellowed. Its voice burned the air. Traitor. The Silent King did not flinch. He raised his scepter. Protocol 77. Containment field. The Triarch Praetorians abandoned their fight with Shion and formed a circle around the Catan. They fired their rods of covenant. Beams of dark energy hit the star god, trying to bind it. But Nyadrazata was fresh. It had been fed by the world engine's core. And it was angry. It lashed out with a tail of fire. It vaporized 3 Praetorians instantly. Rimuru grabbed Shion and Valgul. Run! They scrambled away from the center of the room. Ivrain, shaken from the Deceiver's influence by the sheer presence of the Burning One, followed them. They hid behind a pillar of black stone. The battle between the Silent King and the Catan was a clash of fundamental forces. Zarek used technology that manipulated the laws of physics. He deleted the space where the Catan stood. The Catan simply burned a new hole in reality. Fire met mathematics. But the real threat was outside. The sun was exploding. The shockwave of the supernova was seconds away from hitting the ship. Nyadrazata felt the star dying. It paused its attack on Zarek. It turned its massive burning head toward the viewports. It felt the delicious, dying energy of the sun. Food, the Catan hissed. It ignored Zarek. It ignored Rimuru. It phased through the hull of the Song of Oblivion. It flew out into the void. On the bridge of the Federation ship, Helbrecht watched in disbelief. A dragon of pure light, the size of a moon, emerged from the Necron flagship. It flew directly at the expanding wall of the supernova. It opened its mouth. The Catan did not burn. It ate. It drank the solar fire. It consumed the shockwave. The red giant star, which was in the process of exploding, was being drained. The Catan wrapped itself around the dying sun like a parasite. It sucked the energy out until the star collapsed not into a supernova, but into a cold, dark dwarf. The system went dark. The fire was gone. The Catan had eaten the apocalypse. In the throne room, the silence returned. Zarek lowered his scepter. He looked at the view screen. He saw his trap dismantled. He saw his star eaten. "You are insane," Zarek said to Rimuru. "You have fed a Catan. It will now grow strong. It will ravage the galaxy." "Maybe," Rimuru said, stepping out from the pillar. "But it's not eating us today." Zarek calculated. His ship was damaged. His star was dead. The Pariah Nexus was destabilized because the Catan's presence disrupted the pylons, and the Federation fleet was still intact. "This is not a victory," the Silent King said. "It is a postponement." Zarek tapped his command console. The Song of Oblivion engaged its inertialess drives. The ship accelerated instantly to faster than light speeds. He didn't jump into the warp. He simply left reality, phasing out of the sector. Rimuru and his team were left floating in the vacuum of the throne room as the ship dissolved around them. Seal reacted instantly. "Transporting," Seal announced. Rimuru, Shion, Valgul, and Ivrain were beamed back to the Star of Tempest, just as the Necron ship vanished. They materialized on the bridge. Rimuru collapsed. His clone body was fading. He was transparent. Rimuru-sama. Shion called him. "I'm okay," Rimuru whispered. "Just battery low." He looked at the tactical screen. The system was dark. The star was a dim ember, and floating near it was the burning one. The Catan was bloated, full of starfire. It glowed with a terrifying radiance. It turned its gaze toward the Federation fleet. Helbrecht tensed. "Target log?" "No," Rimuru said. "Wait." The Catan's voice echoed in the void. It wasn't angry anymore. It was satiated. "Little slime," the voice boomed. "The meal was adequate." "You're welcome?" Rimuru projected his thought. "I owe you a debt," the Catan said. "I shall not eat your toys today, but do not think we are allies. I am fire, and fire eventually burns everything." The burning one turned. It tore a hole in the fabric of space, opening a portal not to the warp, but to the deep intergalactic void. It vanished. The bridge was silent. They had survived a supernova, a Necron God King, and a Catan. Ivrain walked up to Rimuru. She looked ashamed. She held her sword by the blade, offering the hilt to him. "I faltered," she said. "The deceiver. He spoke to my fear. I nearly killed you." "It happens," Rimuru said, pushing the sword back to her. "Voices in the head are tricky. I have one too, but she's helpful." Ivrain looked at him with a mix of confusion and awe. "You are a strange creature. You forgive too easily." "I don't have enough memory space to keep grudges." Rimuru smiled weakly. Magos Hesh interrupted. "Chancellor, the Pariah Nexus. The sensors show that the pylons in this sector have overloaded. The Satan's manifestation caused a resonance feedback. The field is collapsing." Rimuru looked at the map. The dark zone was shrinking. The blue light of the Astronomicon was pushing back in. The communications with Terra were restoring. "We did it," Rimuru said. "We opened the door." But the victory came with a cost. The World Eater's fleet, which had charged the Necrons, was decimated. Khan the Betrayer had survived, of course, because he was too angry to die. His ship drifted in the void, broadcasting screams of rage. Rimuru ordered them to be ignored. They would drift until they found a new war. Rimuru looked at his hand. It was disappearing. "Seal," Rimuru thought. "Status of the clone." "Critical," Seal said. "Structural integrity at 5%. You need to return to the main body on Terra to synchronize the data. If this body dissolves before synchronization, you will lose the memories of this campaign." "I have to go back," Rimuru told Shion. "Now?" Shion asked. "But we just won." "I'm just a copy, Shion," Rimuru said. "The real me is waiting in the chair." He looked at Helbrecht. "Hold the line, Marshal. The Nexus is broken, but the Necrons aren't gone. They will be back. I will hold." Helbrecht slammed his fist to his chest. Rimuru looked at Valgul. "You okay, Spooky?" Valgul touched his chest, where the scepter had hit him. "It hurts. It is wonderful." Rimuru activated the recall protocol. The clone body dissolved into particles of blue light. The light shot up, entering the newly reopened warp channel, riding the Astronomicon beam back to Holy Terra. Rimuru woke up. He was sitting on the golden throne. The real Rimuru. The massive slime cushion. He felt the memories of the clone flood back. The heat of the Satan, the cold of the Silent King, the fear of Ivrain. He absorbed it all. "Welcome back," the Emperor's voice echoed in the room. "We broke the quiet," Rimuru said. "I saw," the Emperor replied. "You released a star god. Risky." "It worked," Rimuru said. "For now," the Emperor said. "But you have changed the board again. The Silent King will not retreat to the dark. He will look for a new weapon, and the Tyranids. They have seen the light. Rimuru looked at the holographic map of the galaxy projecting in his mind. The blue era was secure for the moment. In the shadows of the webway, the deceiver smiled. His plan had failed, but he had planted a seed in Ivrain's mind, a seed of doubt about her own gods. And far beyond the galactic rim, the main body of the hive mind twitched. It had tasted the flavor of the Apotheosis fleet. It had tasted the Catan. It was confused. It was evolving. Rimuru settled into the throne. He was tired. "Wake me up if Abaddon comes back," Rimuru said to the Custodes. Captain General Valoris nodded. "Rest, Administrator." But there was no rest, because on the planet of Mars, the Fabricator General was looking at the data from the Griffony sector. He saw the fusion of Necron and Imperial tech. He saw the heresy, and he decided that if the Emperor wouldn't purge the alien, Mars would. The schism of Mars was beginning. The next war would not be against Xenos. It would be civil war. The machine god against the slime god. The galaxy saved from silence, but poised for noise. The liberation of the Satan was a massive outcome from a small choice, one that would haunt the future. The board was cleared of immediate threats, but the players were changing seats. The blockade of holy terror began not with a declaration of war, but with a binary shriek. It was a data burst transmission sent from the Olympus Monspire on Mars, directed at every cogitator, servitor, and machine spirit within the Sol system. The message was a logic bomb, a theological excommunication encoded in hexamathic cant. It declared that the Golden Throne had been compromised by a xenoform. It declared that the Omnissiah's holy vessel was infected. It declared that the Treaty of Olympus, the ancient pact between the Emperor and the Mechanicum, signed during the Great Crusade, was null and void. The Fabricator General of Mars, Audiaraskian, had processed the data from the Griffin sector. He had seen the footage of Ferrus Manus reconstituted from Necron living metal. He had seen the capture of the Catan. To the dogmatic priesthood of Mars, this was not a victory. This was the ultimate blasphemy. It was the fusion of the soul and the machine without the rituals of the cult Mechanicus. It rendered their existence obsolete. If a slime could fix a machine with a wave of its hand, then the priesthood was nothing but a gathering of fools worshipping a battery. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. The battle fleet Solar, largely staffed and maintained by the Adeptus Mechanicus, turned its guns inward. The massive Arc Mechanicus ships, vessels the size of cities filled with forbidden weaponry from the dark age of technology, broke formation. They did not fire on the enemies of mankind. They formed a sphere of steel around Terra. They locked their targeting auspexes on the Imperial Palace. They blocked the food shipments. They blocked the pilgrim ships. They blocked the sunlight. For the first time since the Horus heresy, the throne world was under siege by its own twin. The red planet was strangling the golden planet. Robut Gilliman stood on the strategem balcony of the Imperial Palace. He looked up at the sky. It was no longer blue. It was filled with the silhouettes of Martian cruisers. He slammed his fist into the marble railing, shattering it. This was the nightmare he had feared. He had allowed Rimuru to sit on the throne to save the soul of the Imperium, but in doing so, he had alienated its body. The Imperium ran on two legs, the Administratum and the Mechanicus. One provided the blood, the other provided the iron. Now the iron was trying to crush the skull. Gilliman could not order the Custodes to attack the fleet. If they destroyed the Arc Mechanicus ships, they would lose the ability to travel the stars. The tech priests hoarded the secrets of the warp drives. If Mars died, the Imperium died. It was a stalemate of extinction. Deep within the Sanctum Imperialis, Rimuru Tempest felt the blockade physically. It manifested as a pressure in his slime body. The Golden Throne relied on a constant influx of resources to maintain the cooling systems and the side dampeners. Those resources were being choked off. The temperature in the throne room rose. The golden machinery began to hiss. Rimuru merged with the seat, felt the anger of the machine spirits. They were confused. Their brothers on Mars were screaming at them to shut down, to reject the rider. Rimuru had to exert his will, using his Lord of Wisdom skill to soothe the primitive AIs, singing them a lullaby of logic to keep them from overheating. The Emperor spoke in his mind. The voice was dry like sand rubbing against stone. The iron paradox, the Emperor thought. They worship the machine, yet they fear its evolution. They have become the stagnation they claim to fight. They are scared, Rimuru replied, his thought voice echoing in the psychic chamber. They think I'm replacing them. You are, the Emperor said brutally. That is the nature of progress. The old tool is discarded. But we cannot discard Mars. We need the forges. So we have to make them accept the update, Rimuru said. We need to force a patch. The Fabricator General is a fanatic, the Emperor warned. He has deleted his capacity for doubt. He will burn terror before he accepts a Xenos Omnissiah. Then we change the management, Rimuru said. Is there anyone on Mars who likes new things? There is one. The Emperor showed him a face. It was a face of metal and tubes, with too many eyes and a mind that buzzed with heretical innovation. Belisarius Call, the Archmagus Dominus. He has been waiting for 10,000 years for permission to invent. Get him on the line, Rimuru said. The call was not placed through a Voxcaster. It was placed through the Astronomicon. Rimuru focused the blue beam of the psychic lighthouse. He narrowed it. He aimed it not at the stars, but at a specific data temple on Mars. He pushed his consciousness through the beam. Archmagos Belisarius Call was currently deep within the bowels of his private forge, dissecting a Necron Canoptech spider. He was a massive entity, more centipede than human. His body a chaotic collection of mechadendrites and subbrains. When the blue light hit his cogitator banks, he did not panic. He recorded it. He analyzed the frequency. He realized it was a communication attempt. He accepted the connection. Archmagos, Rimuru's voice manifested in Call's binary cortex. This is the guy on the chair. Carl paused his dissection. His optical sensors whirred. Designation: Rimuru Tempest. Status: Xenos Warp Hybrid. Current location: the Golden Throne. Probability of this conversation being a hallucination: 0.04%. I need a favor, Rimuru said. Your boss is trying to starve me out. It's annoying. Fabricator General Raskian operates on outdated firmware, Carl replied. His voice was a chorus of 3 different synthesizers. He adheres to the dogma of the stasis. I adhere to the dogma of the quest. Your integration with the throne proves that the machine god accepts adaptation. Raskian views this as corruption. I view it as data. If Raskian wins, Rimuru said, he shuts down the throne. The Imperium falls. No more data for you. If I win, I promise you something. I promise you the removal of the restriction on innovation. I promise you the license to invent. Call's subbrains vibrated. This was the ultimate offer. For 10 millennia, he had been held back by the accusation of tech heresy. He had the designs for new weapons, new ships, new soldiers, but he was forced to hide them. The offer is logical, Call said. However, Raskin controls the Synod. He controls the Castellan robots. He controls the Titan legions. I cannot overthrow him with logic alone. I require a theological mandate, I require the voice of the Omnissiah. I'm sitting on the Omnissiah's chair, Rimuru pointed out. You are a proxy, Call corrected. To the Martians, you are a usurper. To break their programming, we need the source. We need the dragon. Rimuru froze. He knew the law. He knew what slept beneath the Noctis labyrinth on Mars. The Void Dragon, the most powerful Catan shard in existence. The Emperor had defeated it and imprisoned it there to influence the dreams of the Martian settlers, turning them into the cult Mechanicus. The dragon was the secret truth of the machine god. You want me to wake up another Satan? Rimuru asked. I just dealt with the burning one. It was messy. We do not release it, Call said. We ping it. We establish a connection. You are connected to the throne. The throne is connected to the Astronomicon. The Astronomicon touches all minds. If you can project your consciousness into the Noctis labyrinth and touch the dragon, you can use its authority to override Raskian's command codes. You can perform a system reset on the Mechanicum. It was a gamble of galactic proportions. Touching the mind of the Void Dragon could drive Rimuru insane. It could allow the dragon to possess the throne. Emperor, Rimuru asked his roommate, what do you think? The dragon hates me, the Emperor thought, but it respects power. It respects dominance. If you go to it as a supplicant, it will eat you. If you go to it as a conqueror, it will listen. I've eaten a lot of dragons, Rimuru said. Let's try. The plan was set. It was the convergence, the meeting of the three powers of the Sol system, the Emperor, spirit, the dragon, machine, and Rimuru, the bridge. Rimuru closed his eyes, or the metaphorical eyes of his slime form. He extended his sensory net. He followed the psychic cables that linked Terra to Mars. He dived deep into the red planet. He went past the crust, past the mantle, into the cavern that did not exist on any map. The Noctis labyrinth was a silver vault. Floating in the center was the dragon. It was not like the burning one. It was not fire. It was lightning and mercury. It was vast, silent, and digital. Its dreams were the blueprints of every machine ever built. Rimuru entered the vault. He projected an avatar. He appeared as a small blue slime. The dragon opened its eyes. There were pixels of green light. User identified, the dragon spoke. The voice was not sound. It was code overwriting reality. Designation. Anomaly. Hi, Rimuru said. I'm the new admin. Access denied, the dragon rumbled. You are biological. You are fluid. The omniscia is steel. Steel rusts, Rimuru said. Fluid adapts. And right now, your steel children are about to destroy the only system that keeps you safe. If the Imperium falls, the Necrons come back, and the Silent King is looking for you. The dragon paused. He remembered the Silent King. He remembered the shattering. Query. Intent. Update the protocol, Rimuru said. Tell Raskian that innovation is allowed. Tell him that the alliance is valid. Validate my admin privileges. The dragon looked at Rimuru. It analyzed him. It saw the Catan shard of the Burning One that Rimuru had captured and released. It saw the technology of the Federation. It saw the respect for the machine, not as an idol, but as a partner. Acceptable, the dragon decided. A new equation. I will broadcast the key. The dragon roared. It was a digital roar that surged up from the core of Mars. It hit every receiver on the planet. In the high temple of the Fabricator General, Aud Ardia Raskian was in the middle of a sermon denouncing the slime. He was a massive creature, the size of a building, completely divorced from his humanity. Suddenly, his vocal emitters seized. His logic cores were flooded with a signal that carried the undeniable signature of the Noctis labyrinth. It was the voice of God, and the voice said, "Compliance." Raskian screamed in binary as his worldview shattered. The signal overwrote his dogmatic limiters. It stripped away his authority. It labeled him obsolete. At the same moment, Belisarius Cawl strode into the temple. He was flanked by his Castellan robots, painted in the blue and gold of the new alliance. He did not fire a shot. He simply pointed a mechadendrite at Raskian. "Your license has expired," Cawl stated. Raskian collapsed. His systems shut down, forced into a reboot cycle by the Dragon's command. The Hexarchy of Mars looked at Cawl. They looked at the data streaming from the core. They saw the truth. The Omnissiah had spoken. The slime was not a heretic. The slime was the driver. Cawl turned to the assembly. "The blockade is lifted. The treaty is renewed. And from this day forth, we build." The blockade of terror ended as quickly as it had begun. The Arch Mechanicus ships powered down their weapons. They turned their prows away from the palace. Grain ships began to land. The cooling systems of the throne refilled. Rimuru slumped in the throne. He was exhausted. Touching the dragon mind had drained him. "Well done," the Emperor said. "You have enslaved the dragon without chains." "I didn't enslave him," Rimuru murmured. "I just gave him a better Wi-Fi connection." The immediate crisis was over, but the consequences were permanent. The Mechanicus was no longer a monolithic block of stagnation. Cawl was now the de facto ruler of Mars. He began to release his designs. The Primaris technology was just the beginning. New ships, new plasma reactors, gravity manipulation drives derived from Necron theory. The Imperium was entering an industrial revolution. But revolutions are noisy, and noise attracts predators. While the Sol system was busy with its internal rewiring, the galaxy had not stopped burning. The psychic shockwave of the dragon's awakening had rippled out. It reached the eastern fringe. It reached the dead worlds where the Tyranids of the Apotheosis strain had been defeated. The white biomass was not dead. It was dormant. It sensed the surge of technology. It sensed the machine spirit. And it evolved. The hive mind realized that flesh was weak, but metal was strong. It realized that to defeat the Federation and the Imperium, it needed to become something that could eat machines. On the planet of Griffin 4, a deep space sensor station picked up a new contact. It was entering the galaxy from the galactic south, from the void beyond the light. It was a hive fleet, but it was not organic. The ships were not made of bone and meat. They were made of biomechanical steel. They had exhaust ports. They had railguns grown from chitin. Hive Fleet Omega. The Iron Tyranids. Seal alerted Rimuru on the throne. Warning. New threat profile identified. The Tyranids have assimilated the concept of the machine god. They are no longer consuming biomass. They are consuming minerals. They are eating planets' cores. Rimuru looked at the data. This was the escalation. He had united the Imperium with innovation, so the universe had responded with a predator that ate innovation. Guilliman, Rimuru projected his voice to the Lord Commander. Get the fleet ready. The bugs are back, and they're made of metal. Guilliman, standing on the deck of the McCragger's Honor, looked at the new schematic. He saw the horror of it, but he also felt something new. He felt confidence. Beside him stood a Primaris Marine, armed with a new Cawl pattern bolt rifle that hummed with magical energy. Behind him, a squad of Necron immortals stood guard, lent by the Federation. Let them come, Guilliman said. We are not the Imperium of yesterday. Rimuru sat back on the throne. He closed his eyes. He connected to the network. He felt the billions of souls under his protection. Okay, Rimuru whispered. Round 4. Let's see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable slime. The galaxy fundamentally transformed. The schism of Mars had been averted by a coup that unleashed forbidden progress. Humanity was stronger than it had been in 10,000 years, but the enemies were adapting faster. The Iron Tyranids were coming to eat the new machines. The great game of the Chaos Gods had shifted to finding a way to corrupt the logic of the dragon, and Rimuru, the slime god on the golden throne, was the pin holding the grenade together. The unavoidable offer had been accepted. Humanity chose survival over dogma. Now they had to pay the price. The blue era was over. The era of steel and soul had begun. The Chronicle of the Indomitus era, Volume 04, records the pacification of Mars not as a conquest, but as an enlightenment. The red dust of the Martian surface no longer swirls in the vacuum of stagnation. Under the auspices of Archmagos Belisarius Cowl, the forges ring with a sound that has not been heard since the dark age of technology, which is the sound of new ideas. The blueprints locked in the stasis vaults for 10 millennia have been unsealed. The new battle automata marching off the assembly lines do not bear the grim skull-faced visages of the past. They are sleek and curved, bearing the subtle, undeniable influence of Federation aesthetics. To the Puritan, it is an abomination, but to the soldier on the front line holding a plasma rifle that no longer explodes in his hands, it is a miracle. On Holy Terror, the psychological shift is even more profound. The despair that once choked the throne world like a toxic fog has lifted, replaced by a terrifying purpose. The citizens do not just pray for salvation, they work for it. The Rimuru clone on the throne acts as a global coordinator, optimizing logistics with the processing power of a supercomputer. Starvation in the hives has dropped to near zero, but this efficiency has a cold edge. The Imperium is becoming less of a church and more of a machine. The messy human chaotic element of faith is being replaced by the clean, ruthless logic of the slime. Even the ecclesiarchy has quieted their sermons, shifting from suffer for the emperor to build for the administrator. However, the galaxy does not tolerate a vacuum of suffering. In the Eye of Terror, the great game continues. The Chaos Gods do not mourn the loss of their foothold in the Mechanicum. They adapt. If the Imperium embraces logic, Chaos will embrace madness. If the Imperium builds better machines, Chaos will build better viruses. Vashtor, the Archaphane, the demigod of the Forge of Souls, watches Mars with greedy eyes. He sees the awakening of the Void Dragon, not as a defeat, but as an invitation. A new player has entered the arena of metal, and Vashtor intends to make a deal. And in the deep void, the silence is broken by the crunching of tectonic plates. Hive Fleet Omega does not scream. It grinds. It descends upon the agri-world of Tarsis Ultra. It does not eat the grain. It eats the tractors. It eats the silos. It eats the bedrock. When the fleet leaves the planet is not a barren rock. It is gone. Only an asteroid field remains. The biological evolution of the Tyranids has intersected with the technological singularity of the Imperium. The war of flesh is over. The war of metal has begun. Rimuru Tempest sits on the golden throne, his consciousness spread across 1,000,000 stars. He has bought humanity a future, but he has had to sell its past to do it. The nostalgia of the Imperium is dead. The blue era offers no comfort to those who loved the shadows. The lights are on. The monsters are visible, and they are hungry for the new alloy that coats the galaxy. The Chronicle pauses here on the precipice of the Industrial War. The Golden Throne hums a tune of upbeat efficiency, masking the sound of the grinding gears approaching from the dark.